G'day guys, Chills20 here, welcome back to Oceania. Today we're going to be having our very first guest builder coming in and working on a big chunk of Dundee. It's Dirty H, he is a Kiwi, he's going to be hitting up some New Zealand inspired builds, which I know a lot of people have been just really wanted to see me start tackling because I just haven't really been doing a huge amount. So consider this a big chunk of some New Zealand inspired builds, and I'm going to get to my own portion of that for sure. I mean, when we start building up the port and even the other side of Dundee, I'd like to really be taking more inspiration from Auckland and Wellington. So Dirty H is going to be joining me very shortly for some joint commentary, but before we get to his build, I wanted to just fill in a couple of areas that have been bothering me for a while and just use this time just to give you a bit of an update about what's been going on, well, what's happening on my channel over the next couple of weeks, schedule-wise and competition-wise, because we are running a competition for my new series. It's over on my Discord server and there's a separate video for that. You should go and check it out if you're interested in creating some sort of billboard or custom company. They will be featured within the series if they are so lucky to make it in, and it's a lot of fun, so go and check out that video if you haven't already. But speaking of that new series, I am still chipping away at it. I am working on that pretty hard because I am super excited to get into it and release it to you guys. And it's taken so long because the map is super detailed and I keep on changing my mind and updating it and changing big areas that I've already detailed. It's pretty much like Oceania, but I'm trying to get the map absolutely perfect from the very beginning. And that's taking a ridiculous amount of time because I keep on changing my mind. So that is just still coming. So yeah, there'll be more information about that and a trailer will be dropping pretty soon. But until then, we're probably just going to be doing one episode a week, and that's going to be an Oceania episode every Saturday. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll be back to my 2 video a week schedule, which obviously that'll be my new series and Oceania, but then I'll also be doing some just random videos in between that I have also started working on, but they're not just quite ready to release just yet. So that's a bit of an update of the schedule. And then in terms of like what you're looking at right now, we are building a bunch of industry, and I just built that custom taxi depot, but also the graphics are a little bit different. I've changed some of the color settings and just playing around with Render It and using some of the color correction tools that Render It has, and I don't know, I can't figure out whether I like this or not. It makes some of the shadows way too dark, and I'm still trying to figure out the saturation, but I do think this is an overall better look. I'm going to record the next episode like this, but let me know what you think, because I kind of like aspects of it. I sort of don't like other aspects. I know I can probably tweak things a little bit better, but at the moment, I think it's looking a little bit nicer. Plus the bloom is kind of interesting. I like it. But anyway, that is it for rambles. Let's get into the bulk of the episode because we do have a special guest builder. Dirty H is going to be joining us. If you're not familiar with Dirty H's work, he has such a variety of different cities that he's built over on his YouTube channel, which you can find in the description below, whether they be European or American or even sci-fi. He's done New Zealand and now he's finally done Australian, although he's probably taking more inspiration from New Zealand than anywhere else. Dirty H, welcome man. Thanks for joining me in Oceania.
Not a problem, man. I'm more than happy to be here.
So Oceania, it's meant to be based on Australia, but also New Zealand, and I have done a really bad job at representing New Zealand in this series, so I'm really glad to get you on, because you are from New Zealand, and I know that you've built something that's pretty close to home. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you built?
Yeah, man, thanks for having me again. So this area here is based off somewhere where I live in New Plymouth, in New Zealand, and it's basically based around an old dormant volcano from about 600,000 years ago. This rock here, right out on this point, is a popular place for going walking and walking trails and things like that, but it's also on the edge of that old dormant volcano. And because we have lots of seismic activity in the area, we have lots of oil and gas exploration going on as well. So I've tried to sort of include all of that in the build.
Yeah, I mean, this is great. I feel like this is the exact thing that we need in this area because, I mean, we are sort of pretty, I mean, this would be like the last part of Dundee, so it kind of makes sense to have, you know, a bit more nature and, you know, it's nice to have something a little bit different to the rest of Dundee and the whole area around here, particularly the beaches. Can you explain the beaches, because they're pretty different?
Yeah, they are. So the beaches are, these ones here that I'm building at least, are black sand beaches, and that's because of all the seismic and volcanic activity and balsic rock in the area, and they are very, very different from maybe what we'd see in Australia. So that was kind of tricky, choosing the right area of the map to build this as well, because the rest of the beaches that we have around here are mainly golden sand and quite different from what I'm going for here. It's definitely a big part of New Zealand, and these walking trails and just nature in general is a big part of New Zealand.
Yeah, let's talk about this trail that goes up this mountain. This is really cool. I feel like the feature of this area now.
Yeah, well, I know that you love to make areas come to life and having citizens use them, and I couldn't agree more with that, because we're going to make this big, beautiful rock, and then that's it. No one can use it. Nah, that doesn't sound right. So we've got to try and make people use it and install this walking trail that's in real life here. And even though the path gets a little bit steep here in a few places and maybe isn't that realistic, the alternative was just to have nothing happen here, and I was willing to take my chances with the path looking a little bit steep in order to have people coming up to the top of the rock and enjoying the view.
Nah, they're using stairs. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? I just assumed there'd be stairs here.
Yeah, you would think there is, but in real life, you've actually just got to clamber up the rock. It's there's a little chain that you can grab onto, but there's no stairs at all. So I could have turned the path invisible, but because of the nature of the terrain here, they would have been walking in mid-air in places, and that wouldn't have worked, I don't think.
Oh, I see. So that's actually a pretty steep climb.
It's a very steep climb, yeah. And while I'm building this, it looks like the path is quite visible. But in the end, I use rocks to hide it quite strategically. So you can only see people slipping between the rocks here and there.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'm just happy that they use it. It's always nice knowing that these areas have some sort of functionality. I've been trying to be pretty strict with that in Oceania, making sure that if we build a nature reserve or somewhere that, it's meant to act as industry, then it does have that functionality. So I'm glad that you did that, because, these sort of areas, I think, are way more fun when we know that they have some sort of use within the series. So, yeah, that's great. And you've got a whole bunch of industry around this area too. I think you built a port down here.
Yeah, that's right. So that's based off the port in the actual area as well. And it's a very interesting port because it's still being used for various things, but half of it's been decommissioned because it's actually an old power station. I believe it was a coal power station. I may be wrong, but it's been decommissioned for almost 40 years now, but it still sits there because it has this massive chimney attached to it. It's actually the second largest structure in New Zealand behind the Sky Tower, and it's got that much concrete in it that they can't demolish it. So this power station has just sat down at the port area here for 40 years doing nothing.
I love that. Is that because it's actually a really big chimney, or is that just because there's not that many skyscrapers in New Zealand?
It could be a combination of the two, to be honest. I mean, before the Sky Tower was built in the early 2000s, it was the highest structure in New Zealand for 30 years.
That's amazing.
It is. It's incredible. It's 178 meters high, I think, which is, pretty bloody high, really. And if you go and see it in real life, it's massive. It's huge. The amount of concrete in this would be tremendous, and you can see why they may have trouble demolishing it.
Yeah, especially if they keep building stuff around it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you get a really good scale for how tall it is when you're actually up the top of the rock, Paratutu Rock, because the rock's 150 meters high and the chimney's much, much higher than that. You're still looking up at the top of that when you're on top of the rock. And
you've got this really cool piping system that's connected to this old coal power plant. Can you tell me what you did here?
So I tried to make one side look like it was an inlet and one side was an outlet, and I don't know too much about the inner workings of power plants. I don't know how this would work, but I know that this is here for a fact in real life because I see it all the time. So I've just tried to include that here as well. So I've lowered the inlet pipes into the water so they're lower and they can bring the water in, and these outlet pipes are about 5 meters above the water.
They look so cool. I mean, they add so much to this area. And it's amazing what you can do just with these vanilla assets. I mean, this is one of the oldest assets. Actually, I'm pretty sure this asset came with the game. So it's cool to include something like that. So you said that this is half abandoned and then half still in use. So what's it being used for?
So it's mainly used for timber now because New Zealand's second biggest export, behind meat is timber. So there's heaps of timber that goes out from here. But also there's lots of oil rigs and stuff, Maui A and Maui B in particular. These are platforms out offshore for oil exploration, and a lot of the equipment that they require leaves this port. So you always see really interesting things down here.
Thinking about the rest of the area, I'm probably going to include, some more industry in this area, and maybe even some sort of small town that's going to be the last town outside of Dundee. Can you think of an area? What would be the best suit for an area like this in terms of names?
I think in terms of names, you'd want to go with something Māori to represent New Zealand. But being realistic, you'd probably want something that you could pronounce as well without sounding like your tongue's being tied in a knot. So I would suggest Ngā Mutu. So Ngā Mutu is the Māori word for New Plymouth, and it's reasonably easy to pronounce.
Ngā Mutu. Yeah, fantastic. That's good, because I have a habit of naming places names that I can't pronounce. So, it's so great to include some Maori in, within Oceania, but then also something that I can pronounce. So I think that's a good fit for the town that we end up building out this way.
Yeah, sure, man. Like I said, I'm happy to be a part of the series, and I'm really excited to see what you do from here on out with this part of the map.
And then the port's got a different name?
It does. I've called the Port Taranaki, which is the actual name of the port, and Taranaki is just the name of the region that New Plymouth is in. And I would have called the entire area that name, but it's probably a bit harder than Ngā Mutu to pronounce. So,
yeah, great. I mean, you know me too well then.
Yeah, just trying to help you out, bro.
And speaking of signs, you started, you replaced the Rebel Sports sign, which is, I guess, an Australian. Do you have Rebel Sport out of New Zealand?
Yeah, we do have Rebel Sport, man. Yeah, but it wasn't that appropriate to use Rebel Sport right here on the waterfront. It's not really a realistic spot for where we have them in New Zealand. I just used the shop because it was the basic shape that I was going for here, and I've turned it into a shop called Hunting and Fishing. And in New Zealand, we have lots of hunting and fishing shops. They're a big franchise, much like Bunnings, and lots of them are located in really handy spots like this, right by a boat ramp. So I know in Oceania, you have tried to refrain from going with sort of proper brands. So rather than hunting and fishing, I've changed it to shooting and fishing. So shooting and catching or something like that. But you'll see me write hunting and fishing here, but I change it in the end.
Yeah, great. And I like that I just, Australia just took credit for Rebel Sports. I have no idea. It could be completely international. It could come from a completely different place. But in true Australian fashion, we've just claimed it as our own.
Oh, man, I believed you, so...
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's very Australian of me, just to claim something as one of ours.
Oh, well, if it wasn't you claiming it, it would be us, mate.
Yeah, great. So that's good. I love that you've included these shops here. So you reckon this is a good fishing spot?
Yeah, definitely. So this is, in real life, they've got a little boat ramp tucked in the jetty, the lee breakwater here. So there's a couple of breakwaters coming out because this is on a side of the map, and this works well with your map as well. This is on a side of the map that is pretty open to the sea, so it needs breakwaters. And this little boat ramp is right in the calm spot, so the boats can get out pretty easy.
And then you've also included these big drums here. So you've got these 4 drums or storage units. Like, what are these things?
They're basically just massive gas storage tanks that were used probably about 20 or 30 years ago, but they were decommissioned by Greenpeace and the Green Party. And now they're just basically big empty shells, and they sit right next to this reserve in real life on top of a massive sand dune. And yeah, they're really iconic to the area, and no one really knows what they do anymore, to be honest.
There's some really great contrasts in this area. I think you've set this area up for what looks like real beautiful nature reserves and walking trails, but then you've also got this industry and this industry of the past too, which is definitely up my alley. So I'm going to continue that theme, I think, when I build in this area. As you can see, Dirty H has built a very big chunk of Dundee and given me a really good opportunity to build in this area with a bit of an idea of what sort of a style and the types of things I can be taking inspiration from in this area. So this is definitely outside of the city. I mean, probably not outside the city. It's probably a town that is slowly becoming just another suburb of Dundee, but I reckon this area would probably technically be out of the city. I mean, it is pretty far away and it is definitely doing its own thing, taking more inspiration from New Zealand than anywhere else. So we do have this town that's already here. So there is that little area of shops and a train line too, where I'm going to be building some sort of train station at some point, maybe very, very, very soon, but let's just leave that for another episode. We are leaving all the train stations for a whole episode, but yeah, let's leave that for another time. But I figured let's finish off some of these suburbs, and we've got a pretty good idea of the style and the types of architecture to use in that area. We have very modern types of streets where they're just one road in, just a nice little wiggly road that connects up the rest of the streets, or connects up the houses, I should say. And then that's it. One road in, one road out, and some wiggly roads, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the type of suburb we're doing, and we are also keeping it very under-detailed, as you can probably tell. I mean, these sort of areas that I'm building at the moment, they're kind of like supporting builds to Dirty H's work. Dirty H has got all the detail, and these guys have more of a purpose to be a backdrop to some of the more detailed areas. Plus, if you're building a city the size that I'm building, then you're going to want some areas that are less tree heavy, less prop heavy, and they're just suburbs kind of just there. You know, we've got plenty of suburbs that are detailed, and then plenty of suburbs that are just very under detailed. And, you know, they serve a pretty good purpose. You don't want anything too crazy. But mind you, the frame rate in the city, it's not great, but it's also not horrendous. I've definitely worked in far worse. And, you know, I think in places like this, it's not too bad at all. So this area up here was a bit of a tricky area because, first of all, it is very high up on this headland, and I did originally put down all these rocks that are right on the water, and I will continue to put more rocks down, but then I will delete a bunch of them. Actually, I delete pretty much all of them because they just didn't blend in with the cliff face of the map theme very well, and that's just because it is so hard to build any sort of detailed cliff face in City Skylines. Actually, probably more just headlands that meet the water. Just because these guys, I always call these things these guys. It's because they have such a particular look in real life, and building something like this is so tricky. Unless you put a lot of detail in and use a bunch of grey flame rocks, then yeah, you can kind of get it to that standard, but then that's really hard to do around the entire map. So you either kind of got to commit to it, or you just commit to what it looks like at the moment. And I don't know, sometimes I find that really hard to just go, yay, okay, just leave it as it is. And sometimes I just really want to detail it and make it look exactly how they do in real life. But it's just so hard sometimes, and I just sort of think maybe we just keep it as one of those lesser detailed areas. You don't even really realize it until you really try to create something ultra realistic. Down here, I mean, because we do have this fishing area, and it's a bit of an old industrial zone that Dirty H has created down here. So I figured we should probably do some sort of recreation, you know. I mean, if this is reclaimed recreational land, and it's probably slowly becoming more residential in these parts too, then yeah, probably some of these areas have been, taken over some industrial areas. So that's what we're doing down here, you know, creating this kind of barrier, this sort of recreational barrier between these houses and then what is this industry that is now slowly being pushed elsewhere. I mean, Dirty H did say that This port is still functional, and there is a big wood export in this area. So I will place down some warehouses to support that. But for the most part, a lot of this area is sort of been changed up, and I think you can probably see that with some of the houses that are being built in this area, and then also these big box stores that usually pop up in areas like this. So I am building a bunch of them. We have our Bunnings warehouse, which we are converting to Oceania's own Irwin hardwares, and that's just one of many that are going to be around here. I mean, we do have another Irwin's hardware closer to Dundee, but we are going to be building another shopping district, and then when we build up this area a little bit further, because I'm not finished out this way, I reckon I'll be back here. I definitely will be back here at some stage. We will be placing some more and adding in some extra things that you typically find in places like this. But, like I said, I am going to be back, and I am just sort of putting in minimal amounts of detail. These are all just supporting areas for the more detailed parts of the city. But this warehouse looks great. And this corner just here, I was struggling for this. And as you can see, I placed down this shopping area, which probably doesn't fit in completely. The ground is just doing some crazy stuff. And this is why I swear to build on a much flatter city or much flatter map in the next series. But I am just trying to fit this in because I figured it is the perfect type of build to be placed in an area like this. So just using some retaining walls and some ploppable asphalt, and then trying to use some trees to cover up some imperfections, but they just did not look right. So I deleted them and added in some trucks instead. Figured they look a lot better. But look at the detail, guys. It is so under-detailed, but it's all just, it all kind of just blends in and does its own thing when you zoom out. So I think it's totally fine and totally justified when you think about the frame rate and what else in this area. I have just placed down some warehouses because we do have a fair amount of wood products being produced within Oceania, and I figured we should probably place down some warehouses that are dedicated to that, particularly if this is where a lot of the wood is being shipped out, or probably just shipped out, I reckon, not imported. That would probably be the opposite of what you want in an area like this. And and then just finishing up these parts over here. Just wanted to make it all blend in, make it look like it's all natural, but also thinking that I could potentially be out this way again when we get a little bit closer to the other side of the ridge, which is well and truly out of Dundee and into an area that I think a lot of you guys are very keen to see. I'm not going to be working on it anytime soon. I've got some other things that people have requested instead and other places I want to work on, but a little bit on the right is a big mountain, and that's going to separate Dundee and this area to what I want to be kind of inspired by the Gold Coast. And I'm trying to figure out whether or not we have the right size for a city, or whether it's gonna be a small town. I can't really figure it out, but there's definitely some places that I want to take inspiration from. So we'll probably get into that a little later on. And then the rest of the area, I just wanted to blend in, just taking pieces of Dirty H's, using Move It, and then just plopping it down and blending it in with the rest of the environment. These pines that he's using, putting them in with some of the gum trees, and it all just fits in beautifully, which you can now see with these cinematics that you are watching right now. Guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much to Dirty H for his build. If you haven't already, go and check out his channel, show him some love, hit him up with a sub. He would absolutely love that. And big thanks to Dirty H. You're a champ. Really appreciate the build. I'm going to give a special shout out to some of the wonderful people over on Patreon supporting the channel: Christopher Wren, Damo Cooper, Nick Serafleen, Ferg, Franco Lucky, VLDC 1000, Charlie Zane, Renardinho, Ben C, Justin Alexby, Xavier Chung, Sully, Josh Goring, Miko, Joe Picaro, Kevin Thompson, and Matthias Winkelhausen. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!